Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Advancement Live. My name is Ryan Catherwood, coming to you live from the grounds of the University of Virginia here in Charlottesville, Virginia. Advancement Live is aired twice a month. It is part of the Higher Ed Live Network, which is a series of professional development web shows. Podcasts as well, which are free and available to you. And I am cutting off. Sorry about that, a little technical glitch. It's always fun. You have to make sure to minimize the Higher Ed Live web show while it's on, when it comes up on www.higheredlive.com. So thank you for joining us, everyone, today. Ryan Catherwood here from Charlottesville. You're turning into a great show today. I am thrilled to present to you a couple of guests that I found through reading an edition of Case's Currents Magazine. Stacy Mitz and Charles Reese coming to you from Marquette University. If you have some questions for the panel today, do check out on Twitter by using the hashtag HigherEdLive, and I will be following that and can offer some questions up to Stacy and Charles. But before I introduce to you Stacy and Charles formally today, I would love to share with you the sponsors for the show. First up is our great friends at iModules. iModules software is the leading constituent engagement management provider for educational institutions. iModules delivers an integrated online platform transforming how institutions strengthen constituent relationships and achieve fundraising success. And Higher Ed Live is produced by M. Stoner, a marketing and communications firm that works with education institutions on branding, strategy, web design, and more. Join M. Stoner's co-founder and CEO on June 9th for a free webinar on using experience maps to improve both promise and process. Experience maps can lead to numerous insights by illustrating what audiences think, feel, and do at various stages of processes. And I have tweeted out a link to that webinar. Okay, now back to my guests. Hey, Stacy and Charles, how are you guys today?
Really good.
We're good, Ryan. Thanks for having us today.
It's a pleasure to have you both. Coming to you from the same office out at Marquette University. Stacy Mitz and Charles Reese are, Stacy is the Assistant Vice President for Engagement. She joined the Marquette University Advancement Team in April of '05, and Stacy leads a team that aims to meet alumni where they are in their lives by providing meaningful connection points to the university and with each other. Which is achieved often through affinity-based offerings and niche programming, volunteer opportunities around the world. And Charles has been with Marquette for 17 years as the Director of Development, Design, and Innovation, a very cool role. And he is responsible for raising over $50 million in philanthropic support for the institution. And he is a poet, novelist, and master gardener in his spare time. Stacy spends her spare time chasing around her 2 children. And I can certainly understand that. So it was great to have you both, and I think that when I read the piece about your Circles program out at Marquette, I was blown away because it really connects with what I believe to be the future of the practice of higher ed philanthropic engagement. I think we often spend so much time worrying about bringing our alums back to campus or having them look back as far as nostalgia goes, that we often forget how busy our alums are moving forward in their lives. And so I think that your Circles professional networking program really gets to the opportunity as far as engaging alums as they're moving forward in their busy professional lives by connecting them with each other and back to the university, all underneath the flag of the university. And so, Charles, in leading off the conversation, could you talk a little bit about where the Circles idea came from, how a professional network program was identified as a need at Marquette University, and then perhaps what the first Circles event was like?
Sure. This is really an outgrowth of how I do my work. The university asked me to work in a region north of Milwaukee. We'll call it the Fox Valley. We have about 12,000 alums. And the other thing that is a bit unique about me, as opposed to many of our colleagues, is I've worked in that same region for 17 years, and we all say that this is a relationship-based business, but when I gave a talk in Seattle a few years ago to 100 advancement officers, I said, how many in this room have worked the same region, doing roughly the same job? And I said, raise your hand if you did it for 17 years. And of course, no one raised their hand. I had to go down to really almost 4 or 5 years before large groups of people began to raise their hands, 4 or 5 years. The point is that fundraisers generally move on, they move up, they're reassigned out of regions, and as a result, the relationships that they build are maybe lost to them, but not to the university. So how do we retain those relationships? And the result of my work in the Fox Valley resulted in my knowing so many business owners. I probably did about 150 business tours, manufacturing plants, CPA firms. It was really one of the first things I asked them is, could I see your business? Could I learn about your business? Could I, in a way, discover who are you? What is it that you're creating? And ultimately, what is it that you love? I believe there are sort of only 2 ways we intersect in people's lives in a significant way. One is their families, and I can't move in with their family. So I thought, well, I'm going to move in with their business. I'm going to learn all I can about their business. And I began to do business-to-business introductions. So, for example, I introduced a supply chain alum to a manufacturing alum and said, I think this person can save you money and you should meet anyway. It resulted in them saving them about $500,000 in their supply chain costs. The supply chain grad gave a $50,000 scholarship to Marquette. He said, thanks, this is great. Are you really a fundraiser? And I said, oh, I'm really a fundraiser and I really want you to give money, but I can't spend all my time asking you to give money. I feel I have to spend a lot of my time helping you make money. And if there were ever, equal opportunity networkers in the world, they are fundraisers. We are hired to call on high potential people, generally who made their wealth in business, and connect them. And if we really do our job in asking these individuals who they sell to, who they buy from, who they compete with, what types of people would they like to know, and we've stayed in the same region with the same people longer than 3 years, longer than 4 years, and generally never longer than 5. So this began to work very effectively for me, and people would say, you can call on me anytime. And I did. So this also speeded FaceTime. And of course, when you speed FaceTime and relationship time, you also generally are closing gifts at a faster clip. Then with that background, the university asked me to go, as I said, figure out Chicago. Chicago, we have 18,000 or more alums. It was underperforming, and there were only 2 or 3 of us working there, and I thought, I can't possibly call on 18,000 people. I can't even begin to call on all the high potential people that we have there with my colleague. But just before going there, I helped create our real estate center. And in the process of creating it here in Milwaukee, I visited about 50 people who made money through real estate, bankers, developers, construction people, and asked them to meet our new chair in real estate. So I said to my colleague, going to Chicago, I said, you know what? We're only going to call on real estate people for the next 4 months. Anybody who has wealth in real estate, makes money in real estate, around it, through it, because of it, we're going to call on them. Marquette, in a sense, doesn't really care who we call on as long as they have high potential, as long as they can make large gifts to Marquette. And I'd venture to say any of my colleagues that are listening, I think their schools all feel the same way. Just call on rich people who can give money to your institution. We're fine. Even if you want to call sort of explicitly into one sector, to go narrow and deep into one sector. And of course, what I found is I went narrow and deep in real estate. I became a domain expert. I wasn't a real estate guy, but I became fluent in speaking to other real estate people about real estate. So the first event we held in Chicago after those 4 or 5 months of calling on, I'll just say maybe 100 alums, we invited them to a luxury condominium project being done by one of our alums. We had our chair of our real estate program, and while we invited 100, 90 came. This has only happened to me 3 times in 37 years of fundraising, where I had like a freaky large percentage of people invited to show up. And as I watched this unfold in front of me, I thought, well, what's really happening here? And why aren't they leaving when the luncheon's over? And why are they swapping cards? And then together with a group of about 10 alums, we figured out we should create this network in opportunity around business sectors, starting with real estate. We worked on the format for that for about a year, adding other high potential, what we thought wealth creating sectors such as financial management, manufacturing and distribution. Now, as Stacy will explain later, all of these sectors have their own personalities. They aren't as wild about networking as real estate is. I mean, real estate deals are all assembled through like a pack. Financial management people aren't always as willing to share their secrets or their networks with you, and so on and so forth. So, just as every region has its own unique personality, each business sector has its own unique personality. So we went forward. This was 10 years ago, this past March, in Chicago, and we raised, I think, about $25,000–$30,000 in sponsorship, because I figured a lot of these people don't want to give the money to us out of their pocket, and they don't have foundations, but they are willing to give us money out of marketing dollars. So all of that money that they gave us was marketing dollars. The attendance was about 250 people, which was the largest turnout of alums in Chicago outside of an athletic event ever. Because again, we were trying to solve this problem called Chicago. And what wasn't working in Chicago was bringing the philosophy dean to talk to our arts and sciences students. Because you know what? A third of the people who attended our First Circles event were, what a surprise, arts and sciences majors. And guess what? They all have jobs, and they're all starting businesses, and they're all making money in business. So it was like, it's somewhat counterintuitive when you think, let's bring a dean to a group of people, then to have this kind of turnout. The other thing was that the average age was about 45. Like, my God, they're like, middle-aged people at our events there. So the average age was high. Only a third of the people there were business graduates. So generally, these kinds of experiences were often geared to business school grads, as if philosophy majors don't have careers and make money. Lawyers stay in law. Well, they don't. They get into high-tech companies. They own equity pieces. So the early origins of Circles was my desire to create the best prospecting experience for me.
Yeah.
I wanted to go to an event that I really wanted to go to.
Well, it sounds like a lot of people wanted to go to your events too, and it sounded like it resonated on a number of different fronts, and it makes a lot of sense. Stacy, from the beginning, of course, it was not all roses, right? Of course, there were challenges along the way that you faced in getting the program up moving forward. Was it challenging to find funding for the program? And Charles touched on it just a little bit, but how did sponsors fit into the mix?
Yeah, that's a good question, Ryan. So as Charles said, we were able to really go after folks through their marketing budgets, and that helped a lot to offset the cost of our operating budget for these events. So first go around, we were able to get some dollars from the university to help us cover the cost, but the reality is that we knew that to really sustain this, we would need to raise more dollars. And so what we did is we've created these host committees around all of our events. So host committees comprise alumni, parents, and friends who allow us to use their names, titles, companies, and we utilize that in all of our marketing materials. So for all of the regions where we now offer our Circles programs, we have these host committees. And our host committee provides us not only with sponsorship dollars, but they provide us with insight as to what industry should we be focusing on? Who should we be asking to speak at this particular event? What venues should we be using? And then through these host committees, we've been able to really sustain this program and offset, again, our operating funds through their generosity.
Stacy, is it a requirement of someone to participate on the host committee to be a sponsor to actually give money to support the program?
It's not. It's we definitely have host committee members who don't sponsor. Really, the host committee has been a tool for our fundraisers to cultivate and steward prospects. It's a way to get your foot in the door and move those prospects forward, which has been a terrific tool, especially for some of our newer and younger fundraisers. And then additionally, once you're a sponsor, that's also been a way for us to get more host committee members. We've started having people come up to us at events saying, how do I become a sponsor? And then through that, we've been able to say, oh, here's the different levels, and they range in terms of dollars by region, which makes sense. Obviously in New York, to become a sponsor, you typically contribute more than you would here in Milwaukee. And then those folks, tend to want their names as a part of the host committee as well.
Yeah. And Charles, in reading the case currents piece that you guys wrote together, you mentioned, of course, that the program was a deep and narrow dive into these particular industries, reaching out to alumni, parents, and friends. Can you explain a little bit more about what you meant by narrow and deep?
Yeah, I'll just comment on what Stacy just said as well. We all say that if only the host committee shows up to our event, then we've got all the right people there anyway. So we've done pre-circle event receptions for the host committee. We will do post-circles event dinners for the host committee. And obviously some of the people on the host committee were working for money. Some of the people are sponsors. So it's like the reason our host committees tend to be maybe abundantly large is because we figure, well, what's it cost us to add someone to the host committee? We want them to be part of that group. And of course, there are people in our host committee who are our secret friends who help work the other people on the host committee. So, we're bringing resources to them, right, to each other. And what they want to see is when they walk into the room optimally are people who they can benefit from and who we can benefit from. When we talk about narrow and deep, which is, again, sort of one of our mantras, which is, I think, in what can happen in our business, particularly around major gifts, is we tend to hop from prospect to prospect. And without really understanding the ecosystem that prospect is within, because we don't spend enough time in their community, or it's a community that doesn't have many alums, or because we don't know how that prospect makes money, so we can introduce them to other people. So what we mean by narrow and deep, and what I discovered as I began to do my work in the Fox Valley, was I became so integrated into cities like Green Bay or Appleton. I would go to evening events there. I would be invited to fundraisers that other nonprofits were giving. A number of our alums said, why don't you just move up here, since you know everyone up here anyway? And I said, well, no, I think I'll stay in Milwaukee. But and again, this is somewhat not the norm in our industry, to have people around as long as I have been around, working the same regions that I have worked. And so in a way, I'm not the model. The model that we try to create as a result of the fact that I'm not the model is, can I create platforms that will outlive me? And we call them engagement platforms. So can I create, and the idea behind an engagement platform is to populate it with people who have like interests. So that would be real estate or financial management, or it could be in a smaller community, other alums who own businesses who want to meet. So one of our line extensions in Circles is called the CEO Roundtable, which is, again, this idea in the Fox Valley is, sure, we can do events for 400 people, but we also do events for 40 who are all business owners who all want to know each other. So, this idea of going narrow and deep kind of is a self-fulfilling prophecy where FaceTime is sped, liking is speeded up, you begin to help them with their business, they begin to know you.
Yeah, and I think part of that obviously is industry specific, right? And it's getting to know folks. As you mentioned, you got started with a specific narrow and deep dive into the real estate industry, Stacy. But not all industries are wealth creating, right? how did you go about taking on some of the criticisms, perhaps, for the narrow and deep dive approach? And obviously, there are lots of other industries that are very important, but perhaps don't generally create a lot of major gift prospects.
Well, our focus through Circles has always been to create these networking experiences that are for those wealth-creating industries where networking is an essential piece of their professional development. So obviously we go back always to real estate because it's all those pieces I just mentioned, it's so key in that particular industry. As we branched out into many other regions, we were very thoughtful about the areas, the industries in which we would focus for our Circles events. So we always take the time through our host committee feedback, through our research teammates within advancement, and then just through anecdotal feedback from, generally folks internally and externally to determine what are those industries that we're going to focus on. But regardless, and of course, they're typically always wealth creating industries, right? Because this is all, we're here, we're fundraisers. But to ensure that we're also inclusive of other alumni and knowing how much our other alumni outside of these industries have enjoyed Circles, we always add a touch that may not be necessarily narrow and deep within the real estate sector. So for instance, we've had a lot of success with resume building, or how to work with millennials, or transforming your career. So pieces that would impact anyone at any point in their career. We've always tried to have a twist at many of our, at most of our events. We've really tried to have that piece available to folks so that they have an opportunity to be a part of it as well.
That makes a lot of sense, of course, and I think probably a part of that strategy also includes faculty, right? I think
yes.
You had mentioned in our pre-show call that you felt as though the opportunity and the success thereof to infuse faculty into the program of Circles was something that really helped sort of kick the program into the next level, right?
That's right, that's right. So faculty have become instrumental to us, and they really enjoy this program, as do our deans. Past university leadership's also been very supportive of Circles. So where we've seen the most success is around the partnership between a faculty member and an alumnus, where our most popular format around Circles are our roundtable events. So, we've had the gamut with Circles when it comes to networking. We have a keynote speaker if there's a good enough speaker that would draw a crowd. Panels, of course, many of us use panels and through our programming. We've done, smaller niche events, as Charles mentioned, and definitely where we've seen the most traction again is around these roundtable events. And we offer up essentially these topics where we're able to combine a faculty member with an external constituent, and together they'll work on the content around this particular roundtable topic. So say it's something around supply chain and what's next for the future on this particular topic. Well, our faculty specifically with our supply chain academic piece of work, that person will then partner with somebody in the field, and then they'll work together to create the best content that they can, and then they'll moderate those discussions together. And what's best about these partnerships that we've seen is not only that they bring their students, the students have a chance to mingle with these alums who are in the fields that they're hoping to become part of upon graduation, but we've actually seen gifts come in through this. It's been a very clever way to actually get an alumnus involved with a particular faculty member in a very meaningful way. That isn't just sitting down for coffee.
Yeah, I think that it's wonderful. And Stacy, we read, all of us who took a chance to read the article in the Currents magazine probably noted that you described now after 10 years that the Circles program is self-sustaining.
Yes.
Could you describe what you meant when you described it as self-sustaining?
Sure, Ryan. So this really gets back to the sponsorship piece. So we still fund ourselves in terms of with staff travel as we go out to the different areas and offer up Circles. We'll still use some of our operating dollars to do this. However, through sponsorship dollars, we've been able to create a fund which allows us to offer these opportunities to folks at a very fair rate, and we essentially use no operating dollars from the university in order to offer up these programs. And so this covers the cost, so our sponsorship dollars cover the cost of the events, faculty travel, because as I mentioned before, we really want these faculty out there with us. Our students, we've been able to bring students to different regions. Of course, to Chicago and Milwaukee, that's easier, but once you move outside of that area, we want to be able to bring some of our students with us. And again, it's really been able to, offer up these programs at a more discounted rate.
And talking about students just a little bit, I was curious, was part of the plan for Circles always to figure out a way to infuse students into the programming? Obviously, it seems like a tremendous opportunity for natural mentor-mentee relationships to occur, for students to engage the Student Career Services unit at Marquette with opportunities to have students discover what they might be interested in, or to firm up those interests as students move towards graduation. Could you talk a little bit about the strategy as it relates to Student Career Services and perhaps even how it correlates to the admissions work? How it might be connected to students as a bonus of coming to Marquette.
Yeah, to be honest, students were not initially something that we considered.
I have to say,
yes.
The great thing of working, we're like yin and yang.
Yeah.
And Stacy always makes me a kinder, gentler, more inclusive fundraiser. I mean, I like all people, little people and big people, but Marquette pays me to really work hard on the big people.
Yeah.
So I get a little bit overly focused on that. And then Stacy, so we do have social innovation roundtables, and we do have nonprofit roundtables, and we do have teachers who graduate from Marquette who need to be put into these events. So this really, the blending, I think, of our two personalities and our functions. This is the thing that we don't see often enough, which is this close relationship between fundraisers and what we used to call here alumni relations. We don't call it alumni relations anymore. We call it alumni engagement because we view it in this synergistic way, and it's and our alumni engagement people are spotting prospects, they're raising money, they're engaged in that. When I came here 17 years ago, it was rather typical Grand Canyon, which is we're in alumni relations and we don't raise money, and fundraisers wondering, well, how can you help me?
Yeah, what's the point of you? Yeah.
Right. So sorry, I just had to say.
No, that's great. And so, it's such a good partnership. But this definitely, I think, this program in particular demonstrates how you can really bridge that gap between alumni relations and development. And I think we really have done that. So with the career services and admissions pieces, these folks on campus they really like Circles because, again, while it wasn't our initial intent to actually have students there, as we broadened this out and gotten faculty involved and students involved in the programs, and it's given these students a chance to put on a suit and practice their networking skills. As we broadened our own mentorship programs under the Circles brand, it's been instrumental in terms of what we've been able to do in terms of involving additional alumni and making more of an impact with students. And what's great from the admissions perspective is we've had our dean of admissions at our programs, and now what she says and what she's had her team say as they go out there is, you can use Circles really as a tool to try and generate more interest in coming to Marquette. She uses it as an example of what they're going to be given upon graduation. They get this great program that will help them continue to evolve in their careers. And so what we've done with Circles is used it during that yield period, so that, once, especially in that April time period before that May 1 deposit date, anywhere we have Circles, we invite incoming families, if we're able to squeeze them into the room, to be a part of our Circles program as a way to serve as a sort of yield to hopefully have them make that deposit to Marquette on May 1.
Yeah, and of course, little people become big people after graduation, yeah. and having students be thinking of themselves as an alum from day one, right, is it sort of a crucial piece, and it allows us to have that when that graduation day comes, it's not such a divide, right, between as a student and an alum. You feel like you're already anticipating what it will be like to be an alum and how you'll be able to grow professionally underneath the flag of the university, and it continues to provide value, right? As far as how the university is impacting folks moving forward. Let's talk a little bit about the circles elements, the guiding committees. We touched on them a little bit, but could you talk a little bit more, Stacy, about how committees are created? Is there a succession plan, kind of like a regional club or chapter that's formalized, so that you don't have a great circle network that's established, and then after a couple of really crucial and involved alums have sort of run their course as volunteers, that the program fades a little bit?
Sure. So as Charles mentioned, you want to create this committee so that if just these folks show up at your events, it's a successful event. And so each region has its own Circles host committee. And this is really the first step to building the Circles program, because you want to have buy-in from these folks before you actually offer up the events, right? So what we've done by region is determined who are the people that we want to move forward, who can offer us good insight, who are people who are already generous donors, who are people that are part of portfolios that we want to move forward, and what industries do we want to focus on, and are there other people we can identify? So we bring all these folks together, again, as we call it, our host committee, and get their buy-in in these almost host committee focus group sessions where we talk to them about, here's what Circles is all about. Here's what it looked like in Chicago when it first started. Here's what it looks like in other regions. Here are sample formats. Here are different types of speakers we've used in the past. And then we ask these host committee members to let us know, are we focusing on the right regions? On the right industries? Are we focusing on the right topics? Do you have recommendations for speakers for us? Do you want to become a speaker at one of these events? So that's how we really capitalize on this host committee through those sessions. Then we go on to ask them to underwrite the program after we've got their buy-in. Then once we've asked them that, we then encourage them to spread the word. And people have asked us in the past, does it matter that if these host committee members are getting other people that they know in the community that have no tie into Marquette? And we say, no, that's fine, because the more high quality people that we can get at the event, the better it's going to be for our alumni that are there, the better the networking experience. Mm-hmm. And so we then ask them again to spread the word, then to hopefully come to the event. And then, as Charles mentioned before, we'll do maybe a pre-event with them, a post-event, then we'll do follow-up with them to get their feedback on how they think it went. And then to keep them engaged, again, we'll go back. It typically is an alumni engagement person with a development person that will sit down with them and do these focus sessions before we launch another Circles event.
Yeah. Were you going to say something, Charles?
Yeah, I was going to say, too, that when you're looking at alumni that maybe are 2 to 3 hours from your immediate campus where you can access them quickly, that if you're providing, if you're looking at non-alums like parents or non-alums, period, and they're within 2 to 3 hours of your campus, if you can provide the most value in the best way, they're prospects. In other words, if you are giving them something that they want and need, and they will come to your event to do business networking, and they will self-identify, then it's really just up to the fundraiser to work them. And at least at Marquette, maybe at your school as well, some of our largest gifts have come from non-alum, non-parents. And because, wealth is where wealth is, but the point is you need to be relevant. And I think we're moving into this hyper-relevant age of, why am I going to school? Is it worth the investment? Do I want to send my child to this school or that school? Why? So when we had the event up in Green Bay, I think we had 150 parents and prospective parents and their children come to it to check us out. And of course, the parents are sort of seeing this networking event and saying, it all registers with them, which is, this is a great network. I'm going to be able to find a job when they graduate and so forth. So I think this age of accountability, of hyper-relevancy, post-graduation, what's the ROI on my tuition, we need more things to offer to parents to say, yeah, Marquette's the place you want to come, because great network, and come to our networking events and we'll show that to you. So, but non-parents, non-alums are not off our target list when it comes to within hours from campus. I can always bring them back here. When you get on the coast, it's more complicated to work that way. But my world has always been 3 miles from Milwaukee, or 3 hours from Milwaukee. So that's my world. And I got lots of people to come back to campus from my world, and they love it, and they become donors.
In thinking about what most universities are doing as far as projecting that value to incoming and current students by way of alumni networks, most universities are working to develop or have developed really mature alumni chapter, alumni club type groups that the focus might include some professionally oriented events. But as you noted earlier, it's often faculty speaker events, volunteer opportunities, game watching events, when Marquette makes the NCAA tournament, those sorts of things. And you have those groups in place at Marquette, right? You have expanded the Circles program into 12 and more regions. And I think, Stacy, you mentioned that the clubs or chapters, I think you call them chapters, right?
We do.
Okay, that they are actually involved in helping to drive the Circles program.
They are. So I know that our world has changed in terms of volunteerism in all of our alumni associations. Chapters or clubs at all institutions, once really dominated what the Alumni Association was about. We still think that they're important, and we still have some really strong clubs and chapters. We do call them chapters, some strong chapters around the world. However, with the Circles program, which is predominantly staff-driven, is this type of programming where we saw the future, where we were bringing that value and relevance to our constituents. But we didn't want to leave behind these chapters and these terrific volunteers. And so what we've done is gotten them involved in the front end. So we use them to help spread the word. We use them to help get some of our key young alums there. We use them to host offerings for maybe young alums or new folks into the city. Say in New York, we'll have a special gathering right after the event for all of our alumni of a certain age, so that they have a chance to network in a different type of environment. And so we've really gotten those folks involved so that they also feel like they're a part of it. And then the folks that typically are involved in our chapters may not be the ones that are a part of the host committee, or may not have the potential to give $10,000 to help underwrite the program. But together, if they can pool funds that they raise to help offset the cost of Circles, we've seen that happen as well around our regional chapter program.
And I have to imagine over the course of time you've had some really successful Circles events, and you've probably had some that you wished had turned out better.
Of course.
Could you describe what was sort of your most successful event format, or perhaps what is the formula for a really successful Circles event?
Sure. I'll give you 2 examples of ones that have worked, and I'll also give you examples of what hasn't worked for us. So in terms of what's worked well, those roundtable topics are a natural win. It's a guaranteed win. If you can come up, understand the relevant industries in a particular region, and then, to Charles's great language, go narrow and deep on those specific topics, and then get the right roundtable leader around it, and ensure that these tables don't get too big. That was a mistake we once made. We were letting 50, 60 people go to each session. That doesn't work. So if you can keep them at a reasonable number, even we let them get as high as 18. If we get them a private room for their discussion, if you can, that we have seen in terms of the best feedback around the events, really good turnout, a very quick sellout, and a lot of forward traction around gifts. That roundtable format is definitely what works best. Additionally, a format that's worked very well for us is actually when we've paired up with another institution. So out west, we don't have the same concentration of alumni as we obviously have in the Midwest. We're located here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And so what we've done, and we're a Catholic Jesuit institution, so out in San Francisco, and I should say out in the Bay Area, we partnered with Santa Clara University around an event. And additionally, we've gotten SFO, our San Francisco University, involved in some of our programming as well. And then out in Seattle, we got Seattle University involved. And so what happened was we each worked to get different speakers. So we had representation from both Marquette and from Santa Clara, or from both Marquette and from Seattle University as examples. So that way you've got, both. We both promoted it to our different constituencies. And then as I mentioned before, having more people there, if it's the right people, doesn't hinder the experience of our constituents if they aren't, just because they aren't Marquette alumni. It actually can enhance it. So what we saw both out in the Bay Area and in Seattle was an enhanced experience and really a lot of Jesuit pride, because that was what we shared in common with these other institutions.
Two follow-up questions on that one, Stacy. The first is, for the roundtables, are they moderated by yourself or a member of the staff, or do you say, we would like you to moderate the discussion? And the second question is it important to start with alumni and then expand out, adding value that way, or do you think if someone was starting a program from the beginning that it would be okay to add not just UVA or Marquette alums, but to start with a broader group?
Okay, great questions. So definitely for the roundtables, these roundtables are moderated by either an alumnus, a parent, a friend, a faculty member may join on as well. And these moderators are very high-level leaders within that industry. So it isn't just the topic that's drawing our constituents to that table and to that event. It's actually who's moderating it. It's who the speaker is. So, our host committee members, people of that caliber, tend to be those that are the moderators, those leading the conversation. We call them moderators. They're usually leaders of the conversation. And then to your second question, and no, staff would not lead them. It's much higher level than that. And then in terms of partnering with other institutions, I think both Charles and I would recommend that you first build your own program. There's a lot of scalability to it. You can make it as small or as big as is best suited for your particular institution, and then to pair up once you feel that you've got the groove with this particular program. We just came to a place where we were to, Circles was strong. We had offered some events out west. We felt like we could enhance our programming by partnering up with these terrific Jesuit institutions.
Awesome. Charles, thinking about another university college looking to build a Circles-like program, and Stacy just mentioned a good idea there, a bit of advice about starting, with alumni being a little more exclusive. If you were to offer some bits of advice to another university looking to start a program, what's crucial to keep in mind right from the very beginning?
When I started here, I was given a lot of flexibility in terms of how I designed my process in terms of fundraising, and they just wanted me to raise as much money as possible and be as smart as I could about it. And so I sort of gravitated to this in my regions, to sectors, to businesses, to introducing people to each other and creating value for them so I could build relationships with them. I would say, though, it's so idiosyncratic to the institution and the personalities of its leadership that either allow these programs to grow or are nervous about these programs growing. This, what I talked about earlier, this divide that sometimes exists between alumni relations and fundraising, and, well, what are the roles? And so those are just things we're given. In my previous life, I was a management consultant to nonprofits and worked with about 200. So I always say, I loved all my clients. They're like a patient. They just have different things wrong with them that they need help with. But I love them all equally. And so, we're all at places that are unique and special that we have to work in and around and through. So what I would say is that, first of all, I think what's important is that the staff really understand this function of listening to what people, understanding the value of business in people's lives. And I often say that in our lives, the one thing that connects all of us as humans is our desire to do well at work, our desire to create more good in the world through our careers. It's the universal thing that makes all of us the same. And so how can I help you do that becomes sort of that ecumenical call to why Marquette is there for you. So, but what's really important I find with the young fundraisers I mentor is, are you listening and asking them questions and remembering the simple questions like, who do you sell to? Who do you compete with? How do you think our network can help you more? Has our network helped you in the past grow your business? And of course, if they're really, if they've got high potential, in my very early days, 16, 15 years ago, I'd say, you know, would you mind hosting a luncheon for me up in Green Bay? I didn't need alumni relations to do that for me. I mean, I could just have him host a luncheon in his boardroom. I mean, it's pretty simple. And I knew 30 people that I thought would want to come and meet him. And sure enough, 10 would always come and want to meet him. And he would say what he did and how he did it and why he was a proud Marquette alum. And of course, after the event, I would call on all 10 of those people. That may have been difficult for me to get a meeting with, but wasn't so hard when I offered them this person and the opportunity to meet with them. So if you're young, so two things. One is that if you're fundraisers, both young or green, can really understand that they can learn the language of business. That we're not, I think sometimes we think we can't talk it because we haven't done it. I'll just say that if you call on 100 people who make money through real estate, you'll be able to talk it in about 6 months, because they will tell you because of course all I do when I go see them is ask them questions about, who do you buy from? Who do you compete with? Why do you do this? What are the obstacles to this? You know, the market update only lasts for about a half hour. And a solicitation might last even less. And then, well, what do I do with you for the next 7 moves?
Right.
You know, and boy, they sure do want to make money and meet other people who can help them make money.
And what do people like best? Talking about themselves,
themselves, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, part of it's just the cultural things may prevent this. The other thing is what's the dialogue between alumni relations and fundraising, and how do we understand the synergy that can be created around each other? So it can't happen everywhere, but you can take this very small, in the example that I just gave, you know, you don't have to do an event. You as a fundraiser out there, if you're listening, you're just trying to optimize your region, try it. You're not going to break any china. If 10 people come to your event, you can say, well, I didn't know 10 people were going to come to my event. I should have involved alumni relations, and then get alumni relations involved, and everybody's going to win and be happy. But I don't live exactly outside the box, but I live pretty close on the edge of the box, I guess, and they tolerate me at Marquette.
Oh, you know, and that's, Charles brings up a good point, though, in terms of where it necessarily hasn't worked. I would mention to you areas where we've had learning where Circles hasn't always been successful. And one of those has been in regions where we haven't had the proper buy-in from our development colleagues. We know we want to go into a certain region, and if everyone was like Charles, easy breezy, we'd be able to just go in there, build that host committee. But, you know, I've realized that it's taken time. You've got to really train everybody who's involved to understand how this host committee is going to work. What our development directors, you know, need to really buy into in order for this to work the right way.
This is really an important point, because just as it's wrong to say, hey, I'm in fundraising, what's alumni relations doing for me? Come on. Give it to me. The other thing is, like, I want to have a Circles event in some city where I work, and you guys do it all. And we've had people who say, well, I just want you to do it. And we say, well, that's not how this works. We can't do it unless you've worked that generally 18 to 24 months, worked one of these, what we might call a micro region or an area, and you begin to get to know who your leads are, who are going to help you facilitate, bring other alums into you. So this is very tricky, you know, that for me to ask Stacy's group to do this for me in an area that I've not worked, like I'm somehow entitled for them to do my job, it's not going to work. She may have to do it, right? Alumni relations may have to do it depending on the politics of the institutions you're in, but I would say it's not going to work, because this works when fundraisers use this message as a way to go into a territory and say, I want to help you and the alums here be more successful, use our network even better. And I want you to possibly be a keynote speaker or a host committee member. Would you be open for that if we would ever bring it here? And we actually find some regions then saying, look, we want you to bring it here. What do we have to do to get you to bring it? Because we're very aware of where we failed. And where we failed is where the fundraiser has not laid pipe ahead of alumni engagement. That relationship can be very politically tricky and emotionally challenging too.
No, I mean, I think that's absolutely right. And it's interesting as we move forward in our business. A lot of universities are looking to bridge the gap. The divide that you mentioned. We're all thinking about that strategy once again. Here the engagement team just had the annual giving team infused back into it about 2 years, right? So 2 years ago, and so it's thinking more about bridging the gap between engagement and fundraising. And I have to imagine deploying giving messages through the Circles program, sort of beyond prospecting, is an important piece of the puzzle. Stacy, how do you do that? Do you offer up a sort of website, a giving.marquette.edu on the beverage napkins at these events? Like how do you sort of deploy giving messages into the Circles program?
No, it's a good question, and we've all, I think, had to just get better about this within the region, or within our, within all regions and within at all institutions, right? And so what we've done around Circles is, as you get a great invitation, and as you are completing your little card, we essentially ask for people's updated business contact information. And as they send it back into us, there's a big piece about giving back. Additionally, we ask for, on our website, as you're registering, it's very clear. We've even, asked if you want to offset the cost of students coming. We know people really resonate with that. We've put that out there for folks as well. And then after the event, when we send out our survey, there's another message embedded in that about giving back. And we've definitely seen an uptick in giving around that.
Awesome. And guys, in the last about 9 minutes that we've got, Charles, could you talk about sort of your favorite success story, right? The when it all clicked and you're like, aha, this is why we're doing what we're doing.
Well, there's two I'll share, and I'll just start it with sort of a more general statement, which I think what Circles has provided me is, the alchemist call, you use red sulfur to turn base metals into gold. So to me, Circles is that red sulfur. And, when you sprinkle it over a lot of people over a long period of time, you will find donors and you will engage them and they will give. And there's just no question that giving has been elevated because we have provided them a relevant experience and on behalf of their alma mater. The one, but specific war stories is, one is we were doing a line extension CEO roundtable of Circles in northern Wisconsin, and the host for that event, who was a manufacturer, gave us a check for $250,000 for, these would be for minority-based scholarships, first-generation scholarships. So we were all a bit stunned, and but this was probably one of the best CEO roundtables we had ever hosted. This was someone who said he would never give a penny to Marquette 13 years ago when I met him. It's really funny what a little bit of cultivation, love, and relevance can do for a donor. In fact, last month he gave another $550,000 to Marquette, and he's not a million. The other one isn't as explicitly related, but it led to which is the 7th largest single gift to Marquette, which was a $10 million gift that was paid all in cash 6 months after the commitment was made. But I attended a Circles event in Appleton and began a long discussion with one of the alums there, who I knew was the CFO for the individual that made the gift. And I said, I know your job isn't to give your clients money away, but I have to tell you, we're going to be doing this and this and that, and I hope you don't mind. And he said, well, you're not asking for enough. You're not asking for the right things. I said, well, would you help me revise the proposal? He said, of course, come to my office. I'll help you revise it. and this was like being kissed by an angel. I don't know. I was all.
Come revise the proposal with me.
I was all getting sweaty and goosebumps, and so. But I literally, after a number of series, I would never have gotten that information ever. I would not have known that it was the right time to do this with him if we had not bumped into each other at the event. And I think all of the people listening who are fundraisers know some of our work is magical. But the reason it works is because we're there and we're with the right people. And you can't create big gift magic if you're not in the room with some of the big gift people. So 6 months later, he came down and said that who is not a Marquette alum was going to give $10 million to us, and we used it to pay for half of a new residence for our Jesuits on campus, and the other half for $2.5 million for a scholarship fund. So, you know, it's just all about being in the right places. And what I wanted to create, you know, 12 years ago was, can I be in the right places more often? And then meeting Stacy and the desire on the alumni relations side to create this opportunity for fundraisers to be in the right places more often is, to me, is the story, is what makes it work.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you guys are doing is sort of industry leading, if not sort of transformational, as far as more folks doing this sort of work that you guys have been undertaking for some time now, right? And to really be rethinking how our resources are deployed, and if the resources aren't there, to figure out how to devise a strategy to have, you know, the alums support the program in the way that you have. It's really great stuff. Stacy, so last question. You know, I am somewhat of a digital engagement a passionate fan myself, and as such, I think about the idea of a professional network like the Circles ones you've created, and think, wow, there's got to be really some great overlap there as far as the connections that are made underneath the flag there on the web. Could you talk a little bit about the development of any web-based Circles type engagement, whether that's LinkedIn or otherwise? You know, is Circles fostering connections through the web?
You know, it's interesting, Ryan, because what we've actually found through Circles is that despite what's happening in our world around interactive media, we have found that people want to connect with each other. And so our most popular element of our Circles program is this paper directory that we give out. We have this nice directory that we create. It's probably outdated the minute it goes to print, right? And we collect essentially people's business cards ahead of time and put it in an easy to read directory. Upon arrival at each of the Circles event, it's distributed. And that way then people are able to go through this directory, see who they want to meet. They use it, follow up with it. We've heard from some of our host committee members that they have all the directories on their bookshelves and pull it out to look up information about people they may have met or thought were at a specific event with them. So that, to this day, still in 2015, is what is most popular around actually that connection piece. We have ventured out more on LinkedIn, especially using the Circles branding for some of our e-mentorship programs, things of that nature. But to this day, it's still that directory that counts most for us. And probably on our side, what's been most helpful is that we get thousands of updated pieces of contact information each year, business contact information from folks who either can or cannot attend the event, but who we hear back from and let us know, where am I working now and what's my new title?
Yeah. I think everybody who does engagement, their ears just perked up with that opportunity to collect all that really great biographical professional data added to the database of record. But Stacy, Charles, thank you so much for joining me today on Advancement Live. I think that there's so much everyone out there can learn from the work that you guys are doing, and so it was great to feature the Circles program at Marquette, and best of luck to you both as the program continues to evolve and grow.
Thank you, Ryan. And if folks have any questions or want to follow up with either of us directly, they are welcome. There's obviously a lot more to it, and we'd be happy to share that with any folks out there interested in connecting with us.
Beautiful. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for watching this episode of Advancement Live. My name is Ryan Catherwood, coming to you from the University of Virginia here in Charlottesville. Thank you so much, and we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much, Ryan.
Thank you, Ryan.